Welcome to the Business Spotlight, where today the spotlight is shining on Nathalie from the Raccoon Media Group. Hello, Nathalie.
Hello, good afternoon.
Well, welcome for being here. To start us off with, can you please tell us a little bit more about you and your business and what you do?
Absolutely. Hi, so as you said, I'm Nathalie Davies. I am the Managing Director at Raccoon Media Group. So we organise a lot of consumer events in the health, wellbeing, outdoor space. So I can list them all if you want me to. We have the National Cycle Show, the National Snow Show, the National Outdoor Show, the National Run Show. We have lots of the National Equine Show. We also have a digital platform as well. So we're all about live events in that sort of health and wellbeing and outdoor space.
Okay. And you guys are fairly new into business, right? So when did you start?
So the business, I believe, was launched at the end of 2016, but we ran our first event at the beginning of 2018.
Right. Okay. So we'll take that as a fairly new business. And if I understand it correctly, you're the managing director. Your bosses started the business originally.
That's right. Yes. The CEO, Mike Seaman, he started the business. I actually worked for Mike Seaman. He was when I came out of university, he gave me my very first job in the events world. And so he's worked in events for a very long time, as well as have I. And he worked, as I say, in many different events backgrounds, and he had always had a huge passion for running and wanted to launch his own event. And so that's what he did in 2016.
Love it. And that's how it got started, I take it. So what brought you into the business?
So, as I say, outside of university, he gave me my first job in the events world. We worked in London together on an event in the franchising industry. And so then that sort of launched my career in the events world. And then over the last 15 years, I've worked for a variety of different companies, organising a lot of different shows, lots of mainly business to business events, not loads of consumer shows. And then, 4-ish years ago, I came off maternity leave and was made redundant while on maternity leave from my current employer. Yes, interesting. And I was looking to get back into the events world, but I wanted some flexible working. So I had 2 little babies and contacted Mike. I was like, hey, I see that you've launched a show. Fancy employing me too? And he's like, yeah, all right. And then here we are 4 years later. I've had, I think, 5 different job titles in the last 4 years. And we've gone from a teeny tiny company to a pretty nice sized little small company.
Yeah, absolutely. You've done really well. Talk me through like some of the things that you as a business, you do really well.
So I think because I've worked in the events industry for so long, and I can compare working for a big corporate events company versus working for this company, I think what is so important is that we focus on our culture in this business. So culture is super, super important. We have a lot of fun. We employ people that we know are going to fit with this culture. And everyone here feels really, I don't know if looked after is the right word, but we're treated very well. And so we work really hard in return. So I sort of touched on, I was, on maternity leave and I wanted to work flexibly. We've got so many working parents here that do the school run and then come into the office at like 9:30ish, and we get our jobs done. And then some of us leave at 2:30 to go and pick the kids up here. And then we just do our emails later in the evenings to kind of make up, because we've had those hours off to kind of be around the children, and family's really important here. So this company looks after people, their people, and so therefore we work very hard in return. And so I think the company culture is very important here. And then on the external side, customer service. So for us, we pride ourselves on delivering really excellent customer service. We're constantly in contact with our customers. I've done shows where you put on an event and then you just hide in a room and you don't really look, you don't go and see what your customers are doing, and who knows, if they're not having a good time, they can just get on with it and we'll hide. Whereas that's not what we do here at all. We're constantly out on the show floors, making sure everyone's happy. We go above and beyond to look after our customers. So yeah, internally culture and externally customer service,
which actually is all the same, right? Because it's all about people. Yeah. You look after your people really well.
Absolutely.
And you and I talked about this before we started recording, but I even loved that shows up in your mission statement, that you're all about the accountability and not necessarily about the working the amount of hours that one should be working. Which is, I think, a cultural change we're starting to see across, especially in Europe. We're really seeing some changes in how businesses are working with that. I feel like the UK is a little bit slow on that one personally.
Absolutely. I remember my old company, I'd had my first baby and I was contracted to employ 9 till 5, and I worked in London. And if I left the office dot on 5, I would miss one train, which meant I had to get the next one, which meant I was late for nursery pickup, which meant I had to pay £5 per 5 minutes that I was late. And so I'd ask my boss, could I leave like at 5 to 5? And I would, like, you know, forego my lunch break. Yes. And it was like, no, that's not sending the right message, because then all the junior members of staff are going to want to leave at that time too. And I was like, oh, this is a nightmare, you know. And actually here is completely the opposite, that we're empowered to work our own out. Like, we obviously got on at contract hours, but they're so flexible, and it works really well, that as long as the job is done, none of us mind if we have to, you know, pick up an email in the evening if we need to, or we do what needs to be done to get the job done.
And I love that, because I can imagine that, because that trust is given, nobody really takes the mickey out of that, because you also, I would imagine that if someone were to come in and do that, they'd be kind of found out or be put right by the team pretty swiftly, I can imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a real trust-based business, and actually, yes, you probably could come in here and take the mick if you wanted to, but you'd get busted quite quickly, because you know, we all have project meetings regularly. We know what jobs need to be done, so if they're not getting done, we would know. And obviously, one may question, well, actually, the job's too big for those hours, but then we'd review that and be like, well, then does it need more people on it, etc. So no, it's very trust-based business, and so far it's worked really, really well. I think I'm correct in saying that in the 4 years I've been here, we've only had one person leave on because they want to leave. Otherwise we keep our people, and they want to stay here.
Nice, love that. That's great. So equally on the flip side, I can imagine since 2016 that there's been some challenges in running a business, and especially in the events industry. I mean,
yeah,
tell me a bit more.
Just a few. Well, actually, that being said, in 2016, when we launched the business, and I say the first show was technically the beginning of 2018, the events industry was doing very well indeed. Our show in particular, Mike, you know, created an event that was a passion-led event, and he grew it very quickly. In fact, more quickly than I've seen a lot of shows. You know, often shows grow quite steadily. This was doubling in size for the first couple of years, which is wonderful. And then, like many businesses, we were hugely impacted with COVID, because our events are about live face-to-face connection, and we weren't actually allowed to do that. You know, it was illegal. And like many businesses, we tried to sort of pivot to make digital events, which we did, and we had a couple that were quite successful, but nowhere near the success level of our face-to-face events. We're all about bringing the passion-led communities together. So for the National Running Show, for example, we get 26,000 runners that live and breathe running, and they come into the NEC and they buy stuff and they listen to amazing talks and they meet up with their community, and it's just wonderful. We couldn't do any of that for almost 2.5 years. So it was a real challenge, and for a small business, it was very difficult, shall we say. But going back to what I said before, we put our customers first. So quite quickly we realized we can't run these shows, but we need to keep our customers happy and wanting to work with us and look after them, because they are also struggling. So we did a few things that made us absolutely no money, but kept us like talking with the communities and kept our companies really happy and kept them afloat. So we had this huge amounts of data for like the different sectors that we worked in, and we were giving our customers like access to our newsletters, which usually we charge for free, saying like, put some offers and promotions out to our audience want it, you need it, and we want to try and keep everyone talking. And so we just spent a lot of time sort of making sure we were staying connected with our communities, and then booking shows in and then having to cancel them and move them again. So we spent a lot of time just moving customers, which was really annoying for everyone involved. But again, we looked after our customers. So lots of shows and events, they would force the customer into what they had to do next, whereas we didn't do that. We were like, we're going to have to move the show for legal reasons to X date. Can we look after you? How, would you be happy to move with us? And we didn't force anyone to do anything they didn't want to. And actually, we lost very little customers because we really, really looked after them. So we got there.
Have you seen a difference with events as they're running now, as we're now, a couple of years after that craziness? Are you seeing a difference with the events now than they were pre-COVID?
It's taken a while to get people back to events. So last year, we still saw a lot of mask wearing. There was people quite nervous. We were getting a large amount of registrations, but people not necessarily showing up. Well, that being said, we still had very good attendee numbers, but it was harder to work out if people were booking a ticket, because often people can get free tickets to our shows, if they were going to come, whereas our previous data would know that if 50,000 people booked a ticket, we knew half of them would show up. Whereas we were like, well, we've got 50,000, but are half of them going to show up? So it was very difficult to understand. But I would say probably the last 6 to 12 months, I'd say events are back. Our last 2 shows were our biggest and best yet, even pre-COVID numbers. We topped our pre-COVID numbers. I think while lots of businesses flourished in COVID and in the digital world, I think we've realized that the need for humans to connect face to face and to get that human connection and that community hasn't ever gone away. And it was on pause, but it's back, and it's back with a vengeance, and people want it more and they love it more. And I think people are so much more excited about it, and they almost feel so pleased they can attend shows because they know that they weren't able to for a while.
Yes. I would agree. And although it is quite interesting, what we're seeing, quite a few of my clients are seeing, is that people are booking really late for events now. So where before they might have booked a ticket a month out or a couple of months out, now it's all very lastminute.com, which makes it really hard for event organizers.
You are 100% right. So that is, I guess, something else we have seen is that later buying curve. And and yes, you have to hold your nerve a bit with some of the things. You're like, oh my gosh, but we do see it because we often have incentives to make sure it's not too last minute for us. Nice. Often you can get a free ticket up until about a month out, and then it's paid for. So often we do get a good registration at a comfortable time, not like a week before, like some events organizers and their ticket model. So yeah, that's definitely changed.
That's interesting. As I said, I see it. A couple of my clients have seen it, but it's interesting as we're having these conversations, more and more people are seeing the same. So interesting. Talk me through some of the learnings that you've had as a business, maybe some unexpected things that happened, or personally for you as doing the job, especially coming from a corporate events kind of role to this. What's been some of the differences for you?
In terms of the events, or in terms of the job, it's like the day-to-day job itself?
In terms of the business, in terms of the day-to-day job.
I don't know how to answer that question, actually. What was maybe the key learnings? I think the biggest thing for us probably is the speed that we have grown as a business. So I touched on it before we went live with this podcast. So I started working in this company 4 years ago, and we were in an office, like a shed, a posh shed at the end of my boss's garden. And there was like 3 desks in there, and there was like me, my boss, and one of the marketing team. And, we'd have to walk across his garden to go into his house to go to the toilet. And then we've since then grown very quickly. There's now, I don't actually know, I think there's about 40 of us. We all work part-time, so it's all hard to remember the numbers. And we've got lots of people that don't actually work in the office, they work remotely. But we've now got this beautiful office in Guildford with all, what we feel like a proper business. And so we're sort of keeping up with the pace of new starters coming in and teaching them systems. And, when we first started, we worked off spreadsheets, and then suddenly that's not good enough for that many people. So we've had to implement CRM systems and HR systems, and all the new people that are coming in, they're like, so how do we, for example, 3 years ago, we didn't have any way to book annual leave. It was just, we all just plonked it in a diary and put it in a spreadsheet. When you can't do that with 40 people, you've actually got to have a system. So all of us old timers are like trying to remember to kind of make sure there's much clearer, straighter, organized processes in place, and to be adaptable as well. Some of us get set in our ways. Well, this is how we've always done it. And then we're like, but is that actually efficient way
Yeah.
to do it when there's this many people? And so we've had to really adapt to, probably the internal systems as a business, having to make sure they're keeping us all streamlined, organized, and when new starters can come on board, they can embed very quickly into the company. And that has been, I think, one of our biggest challenges, but I think we've nailed it, I think.
Fingers crossed. Until the next one arrives and they ask a question and you go, I hadn't thought about that.
Yes, I actually do not know the answer to that question.
Great question. Let's go find out.
I will come back to you in our next one-to-one on that one. Yeah.
As a business, and I guess the answer might be different for you than it might be for the CEO. I don't know. But as a business, what still keeps you awake at night? What are you still concerned about?
Oh, what keeps me awake at night? The speed of the growth of the business, and Mike is very ambitious with wanting to launch lots more shows. So while I mentioned, I think about 8 of our shows on our digital platform, if you speak to me again in a year, we'll probably have 12, 15, 16, 18, 20 shows. And it is the trying to switch your brain constantly to, right, I'm working on this show, right, and the next show, I've got to launch this show. There's constantly change. We don't just get to sit on one show and make it perfect. We make it as good as we can, then we pass it on to the team to grow and develop, and then we launch the next show. And so I guess what keeps me awake at night is, what is the next big thing? What could the next thing that we launch be? Or if I'm in that planning stage, like I've got 2 shows I'm about to launch at the moment, and I haven't hit the go button on them yet. And my brain goes in a million directions of what we could do with them and how we could launch them and partners we could go with. And I'm suddenly like, I've suddenly thought of another idea, and I'll quickly get my phone and jot it down before it's out my brain and onto another piece of paper. So just the speed of kind of keeping up with the pace the business wants us to, and trying to make sure we find time to be creative and come up with new launches.
Actually, I love that one when you're saying find the time to be creative, because that's often the one that we forget, because it's so easy to get stuck into the day-to-day, this stuff has to be done, that you don't, I see that a lot across my kind of network. People just don't allow themselves time to just sit and think or work something out, or just kind of do a bit of brainstorming where you go, it doesn't matter how crazy this is going to be, somewhere in this we'll find something, but you just need to go all out to be able to do that.
Oh, 100%. I kind of was in my one-to-ones with Mike. I'd be like, well, I've got a few ideas, but I haven't had time to think about those because I'm in the trenches of sorting out this show and all the different stuff that goes with the day-to-day logistics. And actually what I've tried to do now is every Friday morning, I've blocked off 2 hours in my diary every Friday morning, because I work from home on Friday, so I don't get distracted with all the guys in the office. And that's my time to look at, what shows do I want to launch? Where am I at with them? And try and be a bit creative and come up with ideas. And actually, not every Friday. Sometimes I'm like, bugger, I don't have time to be creative. I've actually got to do this other stuff. But actually, I'm getting a lot better at it. Nice. And Mike is very keen for us to make sure we're a health and well-being company, and because that's the events we run. So he's like, I don't want you sitting at your desk all day. So he makes us get up and go out for walks. And don't sit at your screen all the time. So I block out an hour in my diary each day to go for a walk. And sometimes I'll all go for a run, live the brand. And so I use that time to be creative as well.
Nice. I love that one. Do you guys have a business plan for the next 12 months? And I'm not expecting you to share it, but I'm just saying, do you have a plan that you go in the next 12 months? This is what we're working towards?
The business, Mike probably does. We have his plan is very much to launch more shows in the UK and the US predominantly for the next 12 months. And then further afield from that to look globally. I've been looking at some in Europe already, but that I think the core focus is to keep our events, to grow, to mature and make sure our current shows are as big and as best as they possibly can be. And then all of the shows that are in the UK that are doing well, we're then taking over to the US. So we've taken our run show, our snow show, and our outdoor show over to the US, which is brilliant. And because our shows are basically passion-led events in in running, cycling,
Yep.
snow. They can be almost anywhere in the world that has that, that market. So if there's a big ski community, our snow show be very relevant there. Or running's an incredibly adaptable event, can be anywhere. So yeah, next 6 to 12 months, it's making sure the UK shows are as effective as possible, and developing new shows in new sectors in the UK and the US, and then further on from that, it will be looking at Europe and the rest of the world.
Oh, world domination, here you come. I love that. And actually that nicely leads me into, where do you see your industry going in the next 5 years? What are some of the expectations?
In the industry specifically, I think one key thing that is talked about an awful lot is sustainability. So generally speaking, events are hideously unsustainable. We build up these stands and then we knock them down and don't get used again, and people travel from all over the world or around the country. And the carbon footprint's terrible. So I know the events industry as a whole is trying to be more sustainable. Raccoon Media Group have got a goal of being carbon neutral by 2025, I believe, is our statement. We are on track to achieve that. We've made, and Mike's very passionate about that, we've made some quite big changes in which may not seem big in anyone else's world, but in the events world, that have actually quite, made a big impact on lots of other events businesses, and they're starting to follow suit. So an example would be, I don't know if you've been to an exhibition recently, but 5 or 6 years ago, you'd walk into Hall and it'd all be carpeted beautifully and they look really bright and fabulous. And don't get me wrong, that looks great, but carpet is so unsustainable in venues. Like, it gets used for 2 days and then it gets, well, back in the day when I started 15 years ago, there would be skips at the back of venues and it'd be burned. That doesn't happen anymore, but it's still, so now a lot of the carpet is being pulled up, and then it's being flown to one location to be chipped away into children's playground material, to be then flown to another location to be then turned into the children's playgrounds and then located back. So the carbon footprint's not brilliant on that. So we have scrapped all carpet. So we don't have carpet at our shows anymore, which again may not sound particularly interesting, but actually the carbon impact on that is huge. We're also doing lots of work around how attendees are getting to the venues, car sharing, using public transport. Can they plant a tree in return for traveling, offsetting their carbon emissions, etc. And that's just a few things that we do. But yeah, so probably the events industry, sustainability is a big focus.
And actually, it's really interesting because I was at the Excel last week for an event where we had some sponsored stands, but equally in the other halls there was other events going on. And the amount of people that are still walking out with bags with leaflets and things like that is, absolutely. And I'm not saying that most of those couldn't have been on recycled paper. I don't know, I didn't check them all, but it is still happening, right? And pens, which equals potentially plastic, etc., etc. So yeah, you're right, it's not very sustainable just yet.
No, we're making baby steps and we're getting there. And the good thing is that it's on the radar and people are making changes.
Yeah. So what kind of challenges are you potentially expecting in the next 5 years as a business?
Challenges. Well, I guess the economy and Brexit and all of the things that are going on politically affect lots of businesses, and they affect our events industry, and that we sometimes can't see what's going to happen, and then it happens. Last year it was, lots of our brands couldn't even get product into the country because of all of the issues with Brexit and the issues with shipping. And then we've got, all of the bad press around, are we going to hit a recession? So then people get very nervous about booking and spending money with us. Lots of businesses have cash flow, are struggling with cash flow at the moment. So then that impacts them when they're ready to book with us and spend with us. And so that's impacted us currently. And I think that we will continue to see these impacts on the business. Mike generally gets more involved in those things than I probably do. I'm a little bit more day to day in the business, but I'm very aware of the customers we currently work with, they're having these issues, and some of them I think are still going to continue for many more months to come.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? What about some of the opportunities? We've kind of linked to it already with the sustainability, but what are some good opportunities that are coming up for you as a business?
Gosh, there's so many opportunities. Yeah, absolutely. I think just because we are expanding to so many different sectors, the opportunity to partner and work with so many more brands and businesses. I think when we were launched in our show in 2018, we were just one show and it was a small show, and it's grown and grown. But we've now got huge amounts of data, huge amounts of assets, huge amounts of events that we run, and can talk to such a large audience that I think the opportunity now is that lots more businesses are interested to work with us, because we're not just organising one run show that gets 10,000 visitors in a hall. We have hundreds, I don't actually know our data numbers, 100,000 contacts in our system that attend all of our shows. We have, social media, the amount of social media followers we have across all of our different products, across the emails that we have. The way we can actually communicate with an audience, I think it gives us a lot more opportunity to go to these bigger corporates that we may never have shown any interest in speaking to us whatsoever, and they're now actually like, this is a lot more interesting because you can reach a much larger audience. So that's exciting for us as a business, that we are having conversations with much larger corporate businesses that want to work with us, and just the growth of our shows, new shows, and growing our existing shows into different markets, into different countries. Nice,
like that. So what or who do you find inspiring even? Not expiring, inspiring. Like who do you look up to?
Oh, well, the nice thing about the events that we run is we have what's called the inspiration stage at most of our shows. Yes. Oh my goodness. And I mean, sadly, I don't get to sit and listen to all the talks because I'm too busy running around the show like a headless chicken, but I do listen to some of them. And some of the people we get on our stages are just incredible. Some of the challenges that we have, people that have overcome some serious, I don't know whether it's a mental health challenge, and then they have channeled, using, whether it's running or cycling or whatever that sport may be, in whichever sector events that we run, to overcome, and they've achieved some phenomenal things, whether that's running across, doing 50 marathons in 50 days, or running 100 miles through the desert in the dark and an insane heat, or just the level of the madness of some of the people and the challenges they do are so inspiring. And you just think, if you come into work and you've had a bad day because your daughter's just kept you awake all night, and you just think, boo-hoo me, my life is hard. And then you hear these people and their stories, you think, okay, perspective here. Stop. One of my big clients is Birmingham Children's Hospital, and they're a charity partner of ours. And so I've had the honour of going around their hospital, and I've been shown around, and some of these children and the things that they have to go through and the things that they've had to endure. And again, you go back to your desk and you think, perspective. They're very inspiring. I am very lucky, and just crack on and don't moan. So I think, there's too many of those kind of people to talk about. But then in terms of who's like my role model, I talk about Mike, and I hope he doesn't listen to this because he'll be like, get a big head. But,
I'll make sure he's blocked from watching this.
Yeah, thank you. No, but he gave me one of my first jobs outside of university and believed in me, and pretty much every job I've ever had since then, he's either helped me get, or like whether he's passed me a connection or he's given me a good reference. And then I did have a tricky time after my second baby. They didn't want to be flexible, and I left the events industry feeling very deflated, and I never wanted to work in the events industry again. I just felt it was so unfair that just because I was a mum, I couldn't have a good career anymore. And so I called Mike up, and he offered me a job, and I was just working 2 days a week, one from home, one from his office at the end of his garden. And then as my children started to go to school, and I've had more availability, and he's believed in me and given me a lot of opportunity. opportunities. So for me, yeah, I don't think I'd be where I am if it wasn't for my boss, Mike.
Oh, I love that. And actually, they're the unsung heroes of our economy, aren't they? Because it's great in all the people that are inspirational that we know that are on TV or in the papers or write books, which is great. But actually, there's so many great people like Mike that do really great things for their local communities and bring people like you into a local business and do some really great things. It's just amazing. They don't get shouted about enough. So although it won't help his ego, I'm actually probably deserves it.
Absolutely.
So what about you? What do you still want to achieve in the next 5 years?
Oh, well, world domination, obviously.
Fabulous. Great. So let's get on with it.
Well, I've only just been made managing director on the 1st of April. So it was, I've been a whole 24 days in this role. So for the, while I have great ambition, I would probably say for the next sort of 12 months, I just want to nail this role and kind of embed this, being a good leader and a good managing director. I love this company. It's the first company I've been this passionate about. So my next few years, I want to launch more shows. I want to grow my team. I want to empower my team like I have been and get their careers going through the ranks. We employ lots of sort of quite junior people, and if we see opportunity and talent, we progress them quite quickly, and that's wonderful. I love that. I love training new people up. So yeah, I want to be a good managing director, and I want to grow the business and get more people involved in the business.
I love that. So if you now had the opportunity, and especially if you have some junior people coming into the business, if you had the opportunity to go back and speak to 18-year-old Nathalie, what advice would you give her?
What advice would I give 18-year-old me? That's a really good question. Probably to not give up, and maybe 18-year-old me didn't need to hear that because I was very overly confident at 18. I think it would be the person that was the most wobbly in her career was when I had children, and I lost all my confidence, and I just thought nobody wants to employ me. I'm not employable anymore because you take maternity leave and you lose all your confidence in yourself. So I think I'd probably go back and tell my 30-year-old self when I had children that you're going to have a wobbly time, but you know what, you're still brilliant, and just because you've spent a year being extremely tired and all you've done is like change nappies and talk about weaning and stuff, actually you're still really clever and you're still a great asset to a company, and believe in yourself. Because I was very unmotivated, I was very unconfident when I came back into this world, and I shouldn't have been, and I've got my confidence back, but it's taken a few years to get it back. So I think I'd probably give my maternity leave self a talking to rather than my 18-year-old self.
I love that one. And actually you're right, because it creates a massive identity shift, and you're not the first person to share that. So it's a shame, but maybe and I would imagine that going through that, it gives you some great learnings, right?
Oh, huge. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. So has running a business, and I know you're only 24 days into the general manager side of things, but has running a business been easier or harder than you thought it was going to be?
Has it been easier or harder? I think not harder than I thought it was going to be, because I think I've always, you don't ever get given a role until you've basically been doing the role, if that makes sense. Stepping into the role of managing director, I wouldn't say it's been a massive jump in job responsibility, because I've kind of been doing that for the last year or so anyway, managing all the budgets and the P&L, and talking to the board, etc. So I don't know if it's necessarily been any harder. It's definitely not been easier, because it's a big role. I still work part-time. I'm still a working mom. So yeah, I think probably the only thing that's been it's talking to myself about my confidence and being, I suffer probably a little bit of imposter syndrome. I'm like, oh, I've got this job. This all sounds important. I put on LinkedIn, I've become managing director, and then suddenly I'm getting all these people going wow, congratulations. And I was at an event last week and everyone was saying congratulations. And I was a bit oh gosh, I don't know. Am I worthy of this title? But actually, I keep saying to myself, yes, I am. I've been given it for a reason. And so, yes, I probably try not to get imposter syndrome because I know I can do the job.
Of course you can.
If I say it enough times, I'll believe it, right?
Correct. I always work on a ratio of 3 to 1. For every negative thought you have to say 3 good things about yourself, because it squashes the negative thoughts. So if
I like that. Yeah. I mean, as I'm saying it to you, I'm not entirely sure I believe it, but I'm saying it and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to keep saying it. I say it with confidence, and then eventually I'll believe it.
Exactly. Last question for you. If for anybody watching this that's thinking about starting a business, what would your top 2 tips be?
Well, I mean, I technically didn't start this business. Mike started this business, but in terms of launching new shows in this business, I think it would be your connections. Use your connections. I mean, I got really slack with using like LinkedIn for a few years, and actually I'm now trying to launch a couple of new events, and the way I'm going to do that is through all of my people I've already worked with over the years, and pulling in favors. Can you connect me with so-and-so because I can see that you know this person? Or hey, we worked together a few years ago, could I borrow 5 minutes of your time? And so for me, it's it's not what you know, it's who you know. So trying to stay really connected. So that would definitely be one, and making the effort to see people. My events are all about live face-to-face interaction, and I think in the world of COVID, we got very we're used to being on Zoom all the time. And while don't get me wrong, that's brilliant and it's a great use of your time. But I love going to live events, so going to conferences, meetups, networking events, because getting to actually meet people, you form a much better relationship with people. So then when you want to connect with them and ask them for a favor, they'll remember you because you met them in person, not just once on a quick Zoom call.
I love that one. And I think that's a perfect end to a really great conversation. Thank you so much, Nathalie, for being here and for doing this and for sharing your story with us. The link to connect up with Nathalie and with Raccoon Media will be in the bottom section of this video. So please go and do that. Thank you for watching the Business Spotlight. Until next time.